I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading from Mark chapter 14, so let's focus on verses 66 through 68. While Peter was in the courtyard below, one of the high priest's servants came, and when she saw Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, "You also were with that Nazarene, Jesus." But he denied it. "I don't know or understand what you're talking about." And then he went out to the entryway, and a rooster crowed. In Hebrew, the word for rooster is gever, which is very similar to gevura, which means to constrict or to restrain. And in the Jewish tradition, the rooster is also a symbol of new beginnings. And that makes sense because early in the morning, it's the rooster's job to serve as the alarm clock. He arouses man from his peaceful sleep, and he bids him to begin his day's work. And when Peter denies Jesus, the first crow of the rooster can be taken to symbolize Peter's turning away from the Lord, but not necessarily his disbelief. It's a stark contrast to Peter's earlier statements of faith. Remember, Peter's betrayal was in response to Satan's vicious attack against his flesh. Look at what Jesus told Peter in Luke chapter 22, verses 31 and 32. He says, "Simon, Simon," which is Peter's name, "Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." You know, Jesus knew that Peter would turn away. But Jesus also knew the effectiveness of his own prayers to the Father. Jesus was sure that Peter was going to learn his lesson, and then having done so, Peter would become the most effective kingdom builder among all of the original disciples. You see, those who are reckless with their faith, well, then they generally sin just as recklessly and impetuously. Peter allowed himself to be constricted or restrained by the enemy's pressure to the point where he acted against his personal beliefs. You see, self-preservation overrode faithful conviction. And just like a boa constrictor snake restrains its prey by constricting it, so also Satan squeezes Peter for the kill. You know, Mark goes on in verses 71 and 72 of today's chapter to say this. He says, "Then he started to curse himself and to swear an oath. 'I don't know the man you're talking about.' And immediately the rooster crowed a second time. And Peter remembered when Jesus had spoken the word to him, 'Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times.' And when he had thought about it, he began to weep." You see, the second crowing of the rooster denotes a new beginning, whereas the first crow perhaps was talking about a constriction. Now, Satan has acted toward Peter's fear to constrict his testimony. But the second crowing of the rooster denotes a new beginning for Peter. You see, it's where he became profoundly aware of the gravity of his sin. With the rooster's second crow, Peter's heart is changed from a mode of self-preservation to deep remorse over his self-absorption. And sadly, with morning came the end of the Sanhedrin's search for testimonial evidence. Yeah, sure, they had all kinds of guys that would testify against Jesus, but here was Peter who could have testified on his behalf. And then the morning comes and their trial is over. Peter had lost his opportunity to defend Jesus at his own trial. Let's consider today's passage as an exhortation. Never be afraid to share your faith, regardless of social or economical or perceived personal consequences. Every day, guys, is a new beginning, and it presents us with myriads of opportunities to debunk the world's testimony against the Messiah. Also, remember that we serve a Messiah who knows our shortcomings. He sees sin before it even happens, and He's already interceding for us. And He is faithful and just to forgive us, to cleanse us of all unrighteousness, and yes, to use us again. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Check us out at www.groundworksministries.com.